Hello, my name's Patrick, and this proposal is called a sweeping approach to nudges. We want to look at improving the street sweeping service in Canterbury Bankstown. And so a quick overview of the problem. Canterbury Bankstown, they've got a problem when they send out the street sweepers that there's parked cars, trailers and boats that block the street sweepers from accessing the street as well as they could. And in the past, they have tried to send out nudges through sending text messages to residents to see if this will reduce cars at the time of street sweeping. The problem with this, though, is there's no good way to measure the impact of this nudge. And the only available information they have to measure the outcome is anecdotal evidence from drivers, which is not really sufficient. And so my proposed solution is to first use AI to count cars on the streets, and then second, to conduct an experiment to see the impact of the nudge that you're sending out text messages to residents. And so how I propose to do this. So first, attach cameras and off-the-shelf AI to street sweepers and start building up a count of average cars on the streets that you're sweeping at the time that you're sweeping them. So we want to build up this over a little bit of time just to see if there's any trends happening there. And second, we want to build up a profile of all the streets in Canterbury. We'll do this using public available information, mainly from open maps. And we want to see, firstly, what's the supply of parking on the street and the supply of private parking on residents. And then we want to see what the demand is for parking from nearby schools and nearby shopping centres that might explain some of the numbers that we're getting from counting the cars. And next, we want to split all the street profiles into two groups that look almost exactly the same. And then one of these groups, we're going to send the text message out to these groups. And we're going to see if there's any difference in the average cars between the group that gets the text and the group that doesn't. And after that, we're going to use some data that is already being collected by Canterbury Bankstown of the contamination rates. A previous nudge by Canterbury Bankstown has showed that if there's a high contamination rate, their citizens generally don't respond to nudges to get them to reduce the amount of contamination in the recycling bin. We're going to see if this is an overall indication of their attitude towards helping the council with waste services. So we're going to look at the results and we're going to see if there's any variation based on the average street level contamination in the recycling. Unique value proposition. So a randomized control trial. Yep, it's a gold standard. We don't have any unexplained variation in our results. It's combining the existing data and technologies being used by CBC to council and just putting it on the sweepers as well. And this can be expanded on for future programs. Maybe you also want to nudge people to move their cars at the for garbage collection and recycling collection.
Well, very slowly. You're gonna have to call time on you.
Yeah, all right. Sorry. Yeah, and that's the impact there. Cleaner streets, objective measure, and it's useful data source.
Thanks, Patrick. A sweeping approach to nudges. Judges, what do you think of the nudges?
I'm happy to go first. Great presentation. I think it's something that we really struggle with, as does every council across Australia, in terms of figuring out how to get people to move their cars for street sweeping, right? If I could offer any suggestion, I would say it might be worthwhile looking into how origin versus destination data feeds into all of this, and particularly using that information to be able to see and get a little bit of a broader picture of the customer, not just if they're moving their car, but potentially where they're moving their cars to understand specifically what their behavioural patterns are.
Thank you for your pitch, very interesting. My suggestion would be for your next pitches, having a prototype would be very interesting. So then you can sort of give us an example that we can picture easily when you're talking. So even if it is like a draw or like it doesn't have to be like a very advanced prototype, or something simple will allow us to get a easier insight into your ideas.
Is that me? Yeah, really great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of anything to do with nudge theory, and I guess there's just the catch with all of it though is that we all get nudged by slightly different things, and so whatever your approach is. Sorry, I got computer speaking. Whatever your approach is, has got to find a way to try to uncover, what are the things that is going to nudge me versus nudge Luther versus nudge Nancy, right? And that comes down to your ability to segment the market, and then kind of work out what makes me different from Luther or Nancy, just to pick on Luther and Nancy is because they're the first two people I see on my screen. But really good. I would really commend it, and it's it's a really new, novel way of trying to tackle some really old problems. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, I would second exactly what David just said about trying to find what the motivation for the nudge is. I love the idea of actual empirical data deciding on how you go forward with things. That doesn't always happen in this sector, so that's a really good approach.
Yeah, I suppose, Patrick, you could gamify it and you could have people competing on this. But one question I have, certainly there's always going to be questions about privacy. What about the, you did mention though using off-the-shelf AI. Have you actually looked at that and identified some AI algorithms and use cases?
I'm going to take that as a rhetorical question because we don't have time for an answer and we're not interrogating the hackathon team. So,
yeah, but yes.
I figured he had, yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Setting him up.